Where have you seen this? And you give a number of examples, but if you could share with the leaders, where have you seen the real potency of connecting the behaviours that you want to see now in the business back to the us story?
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't, in my own work, I don't talk about values, I talk about anchors, because these are the beliefs that anchor us and our identity story. And I, as you recall, I actually give a very historic example from my own culture that, the Polynesians were epic voyagers. The Pacific Ocean is 25% of the Earth's surface, and without any maps, any navigation tools, any written language, they explored that whole area. And this is 1,000 years ago. And to the north, they discovered Hawaii, to south New Zealand. East, they went all the way to South America, but they all came back to this tiny island of 60 square miles, Raratea, which is now in French Polynesia. And one of the things that they did is the navigator, when they went on these epic voyages, would bring 3 stones and put the 3 stones in the vessel, and all the crew would come around them. And these 3 stones, these 3 anchors, if you like, represented who they were. So, one of them would be, just as an example, resilience. To use that as an example, it would be a stone that had been shot out of a volcano thousands of years before. So jagged and darkened and burnt and black, but they've been sitting on the beach for hundreds of years, thousands of years. So that would sit there, and that's who we are as people. We're resilient. So that's an anchor. And then there'll be another one from the meeting house, which would represent our togetherness, and another one made of greenstone, which would represent adaptability, because you can make jewels from it, but also weapons from it, fish hooks, whatever's required. So that, to me, I still don't know of a better explanation of how you practically use values than what they did 1,000 years ago. They would have 3 anchors, these 3 stones, and if they were facing these massive storms or running out of food, whatever, in order to work out how to get through the situation, they would come around those stones and reconnect with them. Now, I took that quite literally into some of the teams I work with. So one of the teams is a South African cricket team I work with. And one of our anchors was honesty. And the reason we had that is just simply because of the complex political context of the country, and that's the most diverse team in world sport. People really struggle to have honest conversations with each other. They're very scared of offending somebody. They're challenging, because you'd read things into it that you and I might not read into our interaction. So we had to actually get rid of that, because we couldn't have a high-performing environment if we couldn't have these honest conversations. So we had to. So one of the anchors, one of these stones. So we literally had a stone, which was our honesty stone, and we would literally hand it around the team and get everybody just to speak to, what does honesty mean to you? So you would have a player like Hashim Amla, a Muslim, who would say, honesty is defined for me in the scriptures of the Prophet. And he would explain to this team, and this is what I also think inclusion sort of looks like. He'd explain what that word meant to him. So he would commit to, I'm going to live this trait in this environment, but you need to understand where I'm coming from with it. And then the next person who would hold the stone was a born-again Christian. And he'd actually come from an environment where his parents were divorced and not honest with their children. He'd also inherited some of that dishonesty in his relationships. So he would explain that honesty means something very different to me, but he told his story of what it meant and his commitment to live an honest life, because he'd lived a dishonest one and how that scarred him. So everybody has an opportunity to hold the stone and define what that value means for them. But the important thing is, that's the most diverse team in world sport, and they all had their beautiful uniqueness, but everyone bought into, these are the anchors of this team. So when I'm in here, this is what we must live. And there were 3 of them as well. So, that's a very direct answer to your question. That's what it can look like. And I again, it's just practical, isn't it? It's practical. It's not something that sits on a wall or whatever.